Hello, everyone. Hello. Am I live yet? I'm live. Yay. Hello, everyone. This is Marc Sabatella with the Mastering MuseScore School. This is my MuseScore Café, my regular Wednesday series of live video chats where I talk about some aspect of making music with MuseScore. So, I pick some topic to talk about, and we have a nice chat about it, and I demonstrate some things and show you some stuff. So what we've been talking about starting last week is this challenge that I've put out there, and it's just a fun challenge where it's fall, it's autumn. Someone pointed out that in England we don't you don't really use the word fall. It's autumn. In America, it's either way. But in any case. Songs about autumn are a nice thing to have, and there's all this poetry that exists, nice public domain poetry that we can just take advantage of. If you're a lyricist, then by all means, or one, feel free to use something that you've written yourself, or that someone that you have permission to use their lyrics has you feel free to use that. But I'm just encouraging people to create some music based on that theme, the theme of fall or autumn. So hello everyone, and I see people coming from all sorts of different spots in the world, and I didn't mean to expand that full screen. So I'm just going to check and make sure I am common. I will often try to be checking the chat and seeing what's happened, and I have my coffee there going. Okay, so and for the record, I'm in Colorado as well. So so hello to everyone coming from all the different parts of the world. So I've had a few people already posting things here to the MuseScore Cafe. So let me make sure that all the necessary links are here in the chat this week. Because if you saw last week, I posted links. I had just created the cafe group last week. Okay, I'll answer that, Colleen. I'll show you. I know what you mean. I looked at it and saw. I think I know what you mean. Okay, so let me come back to that in a second, though. I just want to get that link, and I want to get the link to my harmony course, which really I should post the link as the link where you would have to go to visit before you're enrolled, because that link won't work until you are. So as you have seen when I posted this link before, if you tried visiting it, so it's this course that I'm developing on harmony, and I'm still in the middle of developing it, but I've made a lot of the relevant stuff into free previews so that you can just get started looking at things. And I've been posting those videos and other information to the cafe group so that you can be using it while you're working on your music here. So yeah, I've got a bunch of music, and I want to be able to answer people's questions if you have questions, and I want to yeah, just play some of the music that we've got here and talk about what's going on. So let me bring my chat window back here, and okay, 5 stars for the piece. Yeah. Okay. So I am that, since you asked the question, and yeah, if you could figure out how to upload to, I'm actually going to show you that first. So this is the piece that Colleen is talking about, and I'm actually going to go through the motions of posting a piece. So I'm going to post a piece that I was just working on. Except I don't remember which one it is. It's probably this one. So I was working on a harmonic analysis. Yeah, so this is a harmonic analysis of a Bach piece. Anyhow, the piece itself is from the Open Score project, where they've produced all these free versions, free in the sense of like completely copyright free and freely licensable and all versions of classic works. So to upload to MuseScore.com, you can go to File, Save Online, and it will prompt you to do this. And the specifics of the dialogue can look different between versions, but when you upload it there, the current version anyhow shows it uploading this way, and it shows as being private. And then when you hit the publish button, I think it remains private, and it is now there. So if I go to my own profile on MuseScore.com, or really go to my scores, I will see that score. I can then click on the score, and I'll come back to it in a minute when it's done processing, and I'll show how to add to the group. So some people have added to the group already, which is great, but I do know I've gotten several questions about people not being clear on the whole sharing process. So I'm answering on on behalf of several people who have had questions about this. So Colleen, on your score, which I'm going to play in a moment, I assume what you're talking about here is this measure here, which is taking the full width of the screen. Well, that is because you have line breaks every 4 bars. If you started with the default score that shows up in MuseScore when you first open it, then you have line breaks every 4 bars by default. I use that score if I'm just messing around, but normally I would create a new score using File, New. And when I do that, I can choose what template I want, and I might choose the SATB template. And when you do that, there are no line breaks. So what happened in your case is you've got these line breaks every 4 bars, but this line is just got, the lyrics are just too much. It's too much to allow that 4th measure to fit. And so the thing to do is really, I would recommend just getting rid of all the line breaks. So I could right click one, select all similar elements, and then delete. And now the line breaks are gone, and now it will just fit as many measures per line as it needed to. So it ended up getting 3 on this line and 5 on that line because that's what fit, and it works out pretty well. But then you can add line breaks back where you want, if you want. Like maybe you might decide, hey, you know what, I'd rather have a line break here after line 4. So select it and hit enter. And now there's 5 measures at the end, which is probably more to the point of what you want. So, shall we hear this? Let's hear it. I'm going to hit play, and I'm going to assume, and I will be watching the chat on my phone here. That's a question from Kyle. If it's possible to share the score only to people who are in the group. I think someone who does this sort of thing more than me can answer this maybe better, but I think it's the case that if you make the score unlisted, then when you post it to the group, no one else is going to see it except people who are in the group. And that is the deal. I think if you make it private and share to a group, I don't know what happens, but it just like YouTube, there's public, unlisted, and private. Unlisted is definitely pretty good. It's not like super duper security, just like with YouTube. If someone else gets the link, they will be able to open it, but no one's going to get the link. No one's going to get the link unless they see it in the view. So I would in the group. So I'd recommend making it unlisted if you only want to share it that way. And I would say the reason to only share it that way is especially if it's still a work in progress. You want to get comments from maybe people who are in the same boat, and not like every person who's out there going around looking for scores to criticize. I get that. But in any case, I think that would work. All right, so I'm going to start playing this, and then I'm going to stop it in a second and make an observation. All right, beautiful. I like it. You're calling it a clarinet choir. I'm assuming that means you actually wanted clarinet sound. So if you want this to actually be for clarinet, what I'm going to recommend that you do is go into staff properties. So I right click and go to staff properties, and I'm going to change the instrument from violin to clarinet so we can hear what it sounds like on clarinet. And then I can apply that, go to the next staff, do the same. So unless, Colleen, you're telling me, could I slow it down? All right, I will slow it down as well. You tell me the tempo, and I'll add a tempo marking. So I will add a couple of clarinets here, apply that, go to the next staff, and I'm going to guess that probably B flat clarinet is still going to work for that third part. If it turns out it doesn't, then I will change it. But I'm going to apply that, and then go down and make this one be a bass clarinet. So now we have all of this for clarinet. In doing that, that's concert pitch. All right, so I am not sure what just happened, to be honest. Because now when I look at it, I recognize normally the keys and the transposition happens automatically for you when you transpose things. And I guess the situation was the original score. I'm going to save this under a different name so I don't mess up the original. And reopen the original and just point out, because for people who haven't used transposing instruments, so it really is F, E flat, B, okay, F. So I guess those were the original notes, and it was originally in the key of C. So get rid of this one, get rid of that one, and reopen the saved one. Okay, so in concert pitch, yeah, those are the right notes. Okay, and so yeah, the original was F going down to F sharp. The transposed version is F going down to F sharp. All's well and good. And so this is concert pitch. Because that way I can then turn off the concert pitch button and see everything transposed as it would need to be. Now I'm going to suggest that this piece is not really in the key of C. There is really no key to this piece, as you'll hear when we hear it played more. All right, so I'll put in a tempo marking here, and then we'll edit it as appropriate. So I'm going to use the shortcut, which is Control Alt T, and I'll try. I think the default tempo is 120 maybe, or so. Let's see this. How's that for a tempo? Sounds good to me. So I entered a tempo marking and I made it be 96 because I couldn't remember if the default tempo was what it was exactly. Might be 100, might be 120. I think it's 120. Okay, so it looks like, so there's two different key signature things here. There is C major on the palette, C major key, and then there's the one that says atonal key. And that's what you want, because your music here is, well, not atonal in the sense of completely without any sense of tonality, but definitely it's not in the key of C. It kind of moves around a lot. So I want to change it from, I think what you have is the key of C, and what you really want is atonal. And the difference is going to be that when I take the concert pitch button off and it transposes, it thinks this is the key of D. Whereas if I come back here and enter the atonal key, now when I turn off the concert pitch button, you'll see it. There's still no key signature, and that's a little more appropriate for music that doesn't have a key center. We don't want the key signature to transpose. So now that everything is kind of more the way I like it to be, I am going to go ahead and put it back in concert pitch mode so that we're seeing the pitches, as we hear them. And I'll play through the piece. It's not very long, but it's really, really interesting, I think. So here we go. So I like this piece a lot. You are speaking my language. And when I say my language, So here's what there's so many things that I can talk about that I like about this piece, um, but when I talk about language, there's the language where you have basically music that's clearly in a key, and you are doing everything clearly within that key, and you're using the primary triads, using the 1, 4, and the 5 chord, and then maybe you're using non-diatonic chords and other chords in the ways that traditionally have were used in the days that Bach did, that Haydn, Mozart, Beethoven, etc. all did. Somewhere around the 19th century, things started to get looser. The way Chopin treated keys was a little bit looser. The way Schumann treated keys was a little bit looser. By the time you get around to like the Debussy's treatment of keys is much, much looser than Mozart's was. And by the time you get to Stravinsky, now we're talking about a language where, yeah, there's some sense of tonality, and yet it's really being pushed in ways that are hard to really justify whether we're in a particular key or whether we're just enjoying some triads sometimes because we like the sounds of those triads, or the sounds of these non-triads because we like the sounds of those chords. And every once in a while there might be little bits of 5 to 1, little bits of circle of fifths kind of sounding things, but not adding up to a single key. That language is a language that was really fully, to me, like really well developed the late 19th century, early 20th century, kind of before Schoenberg decided, well, let's go another step further and just go out of the way to obliterate the sense of key entirely as a conscious act, which is a valid thing to do. And yeah, I've got some interest in some of that music as well. But it's really the the music that was at the limits, like just before we hit the breaking point of tonality, that really holds a lot of interest to me. And a lot of the music that I personally create is kind of in that world. So, so some of the things that I'm seeing here, I mean, you can kind of look at this. That's an F chord here, and it's an F chord. So just an F chord, an F7 chord, really, that's being arpeggiated. But then this chord that we land on, diminished chord. Okay, I can believe that we're somehow in, the key of F. I see that we're coming out on uh I hear it. I hear like a root in my head of B flat that's not really there. So I can hear this as F7 to B flat. So I'm talking harmony because I like to talk about harmony, and harmony has been hugely on my mind lately as I developed this course, but also the questions that came up last week were largely about harmony. So there's a sense of B flat as a tonality, but then we get this really lovely passage here, which is really more um, B flat minor, right? Because we have the B flat in the melody, the D flat, and the F. So it really seemed like it was going to be in B flat major. Now it feels more like B flat minor, and it goes into all sorts of other places that feel loosely connected to the idea of B flat. But there's plenty of D naturals. I feel like this is another chord where the root is actually the F that I'm not even hearing. And that's fine. These sort of sonorities that are, this is oh, there is an F. I'm sorry. F. So we have a F, A, C, and a sixth on top of that. So there's more of a sense of maybe F being the tonal center here. And it's really just moving all over the place and having some really lovely, to me, dissonances. And that sound right there. I mean, I don't even know what to call this thing. It's got a C and a C sharp in it. And what I see this as is it's this thing that's happening where we have contrary motion. So we're starting from a place of dissonance and then expanding it into this consonant sound here of just basically almost just a unison F, but with a D in there. So it's using all these sorts of devices that, I could show you Stravinsky music that's using similar types of devices of saying, well, we're going to use triads sometimes. We're going to create some sense of dominant to tonic relationships, but we're also going to do things like, hey, let's just take some dissonance and resolve it through good voice leading to get where we want. Um, Now you could. I'm looking at this now and wondering if maybe that was a typo and that was a C sharp meant, because otherwise these two voices are the same. But in any case, we had a C coming down in this voice. No, that's an A. Sorry, it's an A against an A flat, so it's more lovely crunching happening here. So it's just cool stuff happening, and it's really that way throughout the piece. So harmonically, it's very ambiguous tonally, but interesting. So uh, the one question, well, the thing that I will observe about this is you're calling it clarinet choir, and I remember you mentioning last week that you were interested in using clarinet sound. It started off with string sounds when you created it. I switched it to clarinet just because I wanted to hear that. Um, if eventually you want to let a choir sing this, it will be a challenge because many choirs will not be very good at singing lines that are this free tonality. A really good professional choir can do this. Maybe you'd have to look at the ranges yourself. Well, does is the alto, because you're probably writing more to clarinet range than you are writing to vocal ranges, and you might have to ask whether the ranges that are being used here are appropriate. I don't know, they're not, but I'd be looking at that. The tenor part here that is definitely way high for tenor. Well, this is really more of soprano. This is really more like, and actually, I'm looking at this last thing I thought was going to be a bass clarinet, but it's pretty high too. Not too high for bass clarinet though. Um, it could go higher. So really, this could be four soprano clarinets. Totally, it could totally be four soprano clarinets. Um, and I think I'm going to just change it that way. So anyhow, yeah, I just wanted to play that piece, show these couple things about it, um, and yeah. So if this was going to be a vocal arrangement, really, this is like two sopranos and two altos. This is a women's choir, and I think it would sound really lovely if you could find one that was talented enough to sing some of these lines. Like, okay, I'm no singer, but can I sing this? Boo, ba, doo. I'm going to sing it an octave lower, of course. Ba, da, do, da, dum. And then up an octave. Ah, da, da, dum. Bum, 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 ba, bum, 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 bum. There's my D. Okay. And then I got okay. So I'm trying to sound this out, and if I can sound it out, I could eventually learn to sing it. But bum, 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 bum. I'd have to like get used to that little that leap there. And there's things about things like this, the types of decisions you make when you're not writing really tonally. That there's decisions that you would make along the way that make it harder to sing. Um, and so you can try to adjust these decisions to make it easier to sing, um, and try to hold on to the freer tonality, but you'll find that those are in conflict an awful lot. So yeah. So word. Okay. So to put words at the end, and that's something that people will want to do if you're doing verses. Um, what you'll want to do. Oh, by the way, before I forget, still processing. No, you're not. Let me just refresh that screen. Okay. So I've added my score here. I uploaded it, and you saw that. And now that I'm viewing my score on my profile, I click these little three dots here and say add to or remove from group. And now I can say, add to that MuseScore Café group. except I'm not going to do it because it's not really related. But anyhow, that's how you would do it, and then it would be in the group. So you share online, you find it in your online profile by going to MuseScore.com and then clicking here and going to My Scores, where you'll see it. And I think actually right from My Scores, you can hit these three dots and add it to a group right from there. So first you have to have joined the group. So you have to follow that link and joined it. All right. So for adding lyrics at the end, because this is going to come up for a lot of people, you can go to Add Frames, and I'm going to do it by saying Add Text Frame, except I got to append. So now I have a text frame at the end, and here you can type your lyrics. Roses are red, violets are blue. That's why I don't write. I do write lyrics actually occasionally, etc. And then you can just keep adding your lyrics, and you'll see that it just keeps giving you more space for them. So that is a way to do it. You can also, instead of adding a text frame, add a vertical frame, and that will allow you to put separate little blocks of text. Like if you want one verse here and another verse over here, you can do that in a vertical frame instead of a text frame. Okay, so okay. So all right. So four regular coordinates. Good. So I have that. So at most 2/8 together instead of four. So this is actually a stylistic thing. I would say most modern editors in 4/4 will always beam these notes in groups of four. A century ago, it was more common to beam them in groups of two. And in that case, you could right click your time signature and under time signature properties, come here and break those beams up like that. And you'll see now the eighth notes are all beamed in twos. I would have to do that for every staff, or I would have to create a custom time signature for that. But I will also say that I'm going to undo that for a second. In vocal music, what's actually also common is to beam according to the lyrics. So places where there's a single, a single syllable, where you have I'm looking for a place. Okay, speaks bliss to me. Speaks bliss to me is 4/8 notes, each on their own syllable. So the way that that is traditionally done in vocal music is no beam, and we actually do that this way. And then every is one word hyphenated. So I think we leave that alone. And then leaf, I'll break the beam there, start a new beam there. Every leaf speaks bliss to me, or however. Um, so that breaking the beams that way is something you can do. I'm now I don't do this style myself, so now I can't remember if every should be beamed or not, if that should be separate since they're separate syllables. But what I will tell you, I'm going to undo all that too. And now I'm going to come in and I'm going to go, there is a traditional vocal beaming plugin. If you go to musescore.org, I'll put this in the chat. If you go here, or is it downloads? I just made up the link. I should probably check it for sure. MuseScore.org. Plugins. Okay, it's just plugins. EN here because this is the English version, but I think if your native language is something else, it will, a lot of the pages will automatically adjust and show you the page in another language if someone has translated it. So I'll just actually post the specific link here. So, all right. Okay, corner cases manually. Okay, I expect any plugin is gonna. I use a plugin to add courtesy accidentals, and it does a great job. But I still fix things manually. But check out what this plugin is going to do. I select this and say traditional vocal beaming, and it does things for me. Like it decide like already. Okay, I disagree with this choice here. Fall. That's one word. It's one syllable that is made into a melisma, and it chose to break it up. Now, really, this should have been notated probably as fall with underscore and not that. I'm trying to get rid of that. Get rid of it. Fall with the underscore to indicate a single word that's that's two notes, but sometimes there are words, and fire is the most typical example. When you sing the word fire, it's basically two syllables. It's only one syllable technically, but fire is basically how it comes out. And so it's always going to be this awkward thing where the fi is on one note and is on another note pretty often. So in any case, it's making the decisions. It's decided to not do that. And then length, here's a melisma, two notes on one syllable, and so they got beamed. So that plugin tries to automate that. Okay, here we go. Every is separately beamed. Leaf is beamed. So these guys get flagged. Leaf is beamed because it's two notes on a single syllable. And that's this to me. So anyhow, that's a whole bunch of stuff about there. So so yeah, there you go. Uh, so I'm going to move on, and I'm going to do the first one that I was sent here. It was one from Andrew Mason, who. So I think Andrew, if you're here, you can correct me if I'm mistaken, but I'm pretty sure you said that this piece was basically written already, because this was like you sent this to me like minutes, I think, after I sent out the notification. Hey, I'm going to do this challenge. Like, hey, I got a piece, and it's great, and I do want to talk about it, and if then this is an opportunity, if the feedback is opportunity to make any changes you want to make, or if you're feeling like it's done the way it is, either way, I'm going to talk about the thing. So let me play this totally horse of a different color here, as it were. So let's hear the autumn song here. Oh, well, let's hear the autumn sound. I didn't hear a dang thing. I swear I was hearing it before. Okay, let's bring up the mixer. What is going on here? That's the piano accompaniment. Slow strings. Well, it does say strings, but I'm going to change it to just strings, but I'm still... I'm a little confused, to be honest. Why isn't that thing playing back? It's demoitis is why it's not playing back. Come on, strings. Strings fast. I'll use strings fast. Is there a strings fast expression? Yeah, expressive. So that'll have the single note dynamics. But it ain't gonna do me any good if it doesn't play at all. And right now it's not playing at all. That is so curious. Right. So apparently these notes. Oh, idea. Absolutely beautiful in a totally different way than the one we heard before. So I love that we have this variety of languages being spoken here. Musical languages. They're both English poems, but yeah. So again, my focus today was going to be on harmony because I said it was. But I'm happy to also deal with any other questions that come up. So this, unlike, okay, so Colleen's piece really had no clear key center and was, as I said, at that sort of extreme end of, well, little bits of tonality here and there, but not really anything in particular as far as the key goes. Here, this is the key of D, and this is the key of D in absolutely classic style. So like that whole introduction is totally diatonic. One, then four, back to one, four, one. It's all primary triads, basically, there. We use an inversion here that Andrew has. Um, so it's the one chord in first inversion, so that F sharp gets to move nicely to the G. Yeah, that's all really, really great. Now, I'm a little curious. I haven't gone through and done the math, and Andrew, I do see you're here, so that's great. If It's hard for me sometimes to follow harmonically what's going on when I'm having to look at four notes on different staves. I can do it to some extent until lyrics get in the way, and then my brain has a hard time sorting that out. So I would love it if it were the case that what's happening vocally is exactly the same as what's happening in the accompaniment. However, I know that that's not quite literally true because the bass in that second measure is dotted quarter, eighth, quarter, quarter, and in the accompaniment, it's quarter, quarter, half. So I know it's not exactly literally the same, but the question is it close enough to the same that if I look at the accompaniment, I'm understanding everything about the harmony? That is my question. Um, so anyhow, so just looking at the first thing, I'm not going to like do an entire harmonic analysis of this, but I want to point out some things. You can see by the lack of accidentals in the first three measures that it's all diatonic in the key. So that far, I know it's diatonic in the key of D specifically because D is our key signature. Well, D or B minor, but come on, it's D major, right? This is D major right there from the very beginning. We got our D in the melody, we got our D in the bass. Until right here, we have a chord that is not diatonic, and I know that because I see this G sharp here. Um, yeah. So I'm going to be reading off the accompaniment here, and then looking up here for corroboration sometimes. But the tenor G sharp, tenor G sharp. So, but it is possible actually, and actually, let me show you this because this is actually a really useful thing to know about if you don't know about it already. I am going to add another staff after that alto staff, and if I remember correctly, we have now added it. We have now modified this so if I add a staff, oh, it adds below. Okay, well, I don't want to do that. Let me delete that. It'll add it below whatever staff is selected. I think it used to always add at the bottom, and then you had to move it up with the arrows. But as of 3.4, 3.5, maybe even just 3.5, it might be a really recent new feature. If I select the alto and double-click voice, it'll add it there, and then I can add another one here. So is that really what I want? Well, anyhow, you can do that. Now I'm thinking about now whether that's how I wanted to do it or not. But what I can do is copy these guys. And so actually, I'm going to go back to the instruments and I'm going to move that vocal staff down because I've decided I want them both below the bass. But here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to select all the music there. And I'm going to, I think, use the selection filter. So you're getting to see all sorts of MuseScore isms here. I'm going to use the selection filter to turn off lyrics so that I'm only copying the notes. And then I'm going to copy that down here. I'm realizing I'm doing this a little bit wrong, but that's okay. It's still going to work. So now I have those notes copied down here. And now I'm going to use Tools, Implode. And now I have what I want. right? I have those two voices combined onto a single staff. So here's how I could do that to combine the tenor and the bass. I'm actually going to combine it in place. So I'm going to say Tools, Implode, and then I'm going to hit Copy. So I have that tenor there, but notice it's actually messed it up, right? I copied it in, I did it in place, so the tenor is now messed up. But I did the copy. Now I can undo the implode, and now I can come down here and paste and hopefully get the right answer. And I do have the right answer, except my clef is not the right clef. I don't need the selection filter anymore. So I can fix my clef to be bass clef. So now I have what I know is actually correctly representing the vocal stave. So the implode tool is what let me combine those things. Conversely, you can write in this format and then use the explode tool to turn it into the other thing. So that can be a really useful thing. And I have a whole cafe on writing vocal music from like a year ago or so, in which I think I talk about that. So I can't be heard when I speak over the music. Good to know. So, all right, good to know. So what I was saying was these first three measures are diatonic, and then this chord is not diatonic, which I know because of the G sharp. So, so I got sidetracked into talking about imploding and exploding, but it's useful to me because now I can see my vocal parts, and I no longer have to worry about whether they exactly match the accompaniment or not. I can just look at what's actually happening in the vocal parts here. So anyhow, we have this G sharp here, and that is anytime you see an accidental, we know something not diatonic is happening. And specifically, if I look at the chord here, I see an E, a G sharp, and a B, and a D. This is an E7 chord resolving to A and C sharp, which is an A chord. So we have E7 resolving to A. This is, for people who haven't really studied this part of harmony, is what's called a secondary dominant. We're in the key of D. A is our 5 chord. It's the dominant is the term we use for the 5 chord. But if we were in the key of A, we're not really, but let's just play a little make-believe game here. What if we want to feel for the moment, just for a moment, like we're in the key of A? Why would we want to do that? Well, let's not answer that right now. Let's pretend we want to feel a little bit like we've moved to A. Then the way to do that is you give A its own personal 5 chord. And that's what this chord is here. This E chord is the 5 chord in the key of A. It totally belongs there in the key of A. It's 5-1 in the key of A. We call that a secondary dominant. It's a dominant chord. It's a 5 chord in some secondary key, A. The real key is D, but E is the dominant in some other key, in this case A. Why do you do that? Because it's interesting, because it sounds good. It adds harmonic variety. If you're going to visit the A chord anyhow, you might as well maybe take a suitcase and stay a little while. That's sometimes I talk about whether we actually unpack the suitcase or not, because then maybe we're talking about actually modulating to the key of A. There's a word that we use here of tonicizing. That just means we're just creating the illusion of 5-1 in the key of A. But as we get past there, where did we go over here? As soon as we get to that A chord, as soon as we get to that A chord, you know what? I'm going to switch to continuous view because it'll make this easier to follow for me. As soon as we get to that A chord, right here, it starts acting like it's a real A. Like this was the illusion 5-1 in the key of A, but as soon as we reach that A chord, it says, "Oh no, I'm not really. We haven't really moved into the key of A. I'm just the 5 chord in the key of D." Back to 1, so 5-1 in the key of D, and then again, it's diatonic for a couple measures. So it's all diatonic, and we get to see more 5 to 1, and you're going to expect to see 5 to 1. Then we have, again, we see an accidental, so we know something is going on. And the question is, oh, wait a minute, Andrew, were you gone for a while? You say back again, or maybe that was me back again. Don't know. In any case, glad you're back, or I'm back, or whoever's back is back. So the A sharp here is again indicating that, well, maybe we're doing it could just be a passing tone. Just because you see an accidental, it doesn't mean that we've actually left the key harmonically. But in this case, if I add it all up, I can see what's happening here. I have an F sharp, A sharp, C sharp, E. That is an F sharp 7 chord. And that A sharp is not in the key of D. So we're somewhere outside the key of D. Why is that happening? Well, again, we look at the next chord. We see a B minor chord, B, D. In both cases, the fifth was missing. And that is actually really common when we use a secondary dominant, especially if that dominant actually has a seventh on it. The way the voice leading is going to work out, it's often going to be the case that you're going to end up with a chord that is missing a fifth. So that's perfectly common. But in any case, we have basically a B minor chord here, the B and the D. So again, if we play Tonic for a Day, if we pretend we're in the key of B minor, we ask ourselves, well, how do we really convey the sense of B minor being our key? The answer is we give it its own personal 5 chord. What's the 5 chord in the key of B minor? It's F sharp, or F sharp 7 in this case. So that's 5 to 1 in the key of B minor. So this is an example of a secondary dominant. And then the next measure, more of the same, right? And in the next measure, we have the same device used again, a similar device. I'm going to come back. Remember to select live chat. Oh, okay, yeah. So actually, I am missing a lot of messages. True, but I'm checking them on my phone as well. So that I don't miss as much. But I think what happens is, live chat. Oh, am I missing messages? This is what. Oh, I see what you're saying. I'm actually missing messages because I've got live because I have only top chat. I did not know that I was going to miss so much. But my phone is not letting me change between them. So apparently I've missed some stuff, and that's just the way it is. So I'm going to have to come back over here. So over here, I can certainly switch between live. So apparently I missed stuff. I suspect that some of the stuff I miss is like automatically generated stuff from YouTube or stuff that YouTube decided was spam. But in any case, I don't think anything here was actually missing. I think all of it's on my phone as well. Yeah, so I don't type into the video chat on my phone, but I am using it so that I can kind of monitor it, what's going on while I'm focused over here. Okay, so anyhow, there's probably some feature, now that I think about it. This is Chrome OS that I'm using here. This is a Linux version of MuseScore. This is Chrome here. And there might be some way to pin this window to stay always on top. I know Windows has an always on top feature, but I wouldn't know how to invoke that here. So I don't get to. Anyhow, E minor chord here. E, G, B. And then again, I have an accidental F sharp, D sharp. And here I would say, oh, that's the 5 chord in the key of E minor. And we have another one of these secondary dominant things. But actually, I don't see the root. The 5 chord in the key of E minor would be B. And there is no B here. There's just D sharp, F sharp, and A. So it's really a D sharp diminished chord. So this is another thing that exists called a secondary diminished chord, where instead of being the 5 chord in the key of E minor, it's the 7 chord in the key of E minor. D sharp diminished instead of B. But B7 is the same notes. If I just added a B on the bottom of this thing, I'd have B, D sharp, A, A. Then it would be B7. So they're largely the same chord. They're kind of interchangeable. They both have what's called dominant function. So in any case, we're seeing another secondary dominant type thing here, except now it's a secondary diminished. And here, okay, so then we're back into the world. Again, this E minor starts doing things that we expect E minor to do. It goes, this is in the key of D, that is our 2 chord, and it is going to 5. Right there, 2 to 5, circle of fifths. And then our 5 chord in this case goes to 6. That's what's called a deceptive cadence. So we're really seeing this as like really kind of textbook examples of all the sorts of things you would want to know about harmony. And notice I have reached almost the end of the main part of the piece, and every bit of chromaticism that I've seen has been basically secondary dominant and that one diminished chord. And that is, yeah, that is absolutely in keeping with what you expect in this style. Mostly diatonic, secondary dominance, and secondary diminished chords being the main non-diatonic chords that we would see. So again, I see an accidental, and I want to ask myself what's going on harmonically with it. So I'm looking ahead to what it's going to. I see the G sharp, and every time I see, here's a little thing you could maybe take to the bank. When you see one of these accidentals here, if it's a raising a note up, it's because we're basically creating a leading tone. Assuming that this is going to be some sort of secondary dominant or secondary diminished chord, it's basically tonicizing, it's creating a leading tone. This D sharp was the leading tone into E, and the A sharp, here the G sharp, was a leading tone into A. The A sharp was leading tone into B. So when you see these accidentals that are basically pushing the pitch up, a sharp or a natural that had been on a flat before, if the accidental is pushing the pitch up, chances are really good that you're looking at the leading tone, and then you look at the next note. So I look at the G sharp and I assume, it's probably a leading tone in the key of A, and then I ask myself, well, does this look like a 5 chord? And again, 5 chord in the key of A would have an E in it. There's no E here, but I can look at this and say, that's the 7 chord. G sharp, B, D, and F sharp. So every single non-diatonic note here we can look at as being a secondary dominant. And so here is my lesson for you in doing this. If you are able to follow that discussion, so first of all, if you already know all this stuff, you're like, yeah, tell me something I don't already know. Great. I'm happy you already know that. If everything I said is, wait a minute, what's a chord again? That I'm not going to explain everything that I just explained, but I can tell you that if you are like, wow, I know a lot of the words you just used, but I didn't know them in that order. I didn't know specifically this concept of secondary dominant that you're talking about. I had heard that word, but didn't really know what it was. Or I heard it, but I didn't know how it fit into the grand scheme of things. I'll tell you how it fits in the grand scheme of things. If you want to write music in this style, that is what you need to know. You can pick pretty much any diatonic chord and use it at any time, and it's okay. It really is. Circle of fifths is good. So from 3 to 6 to 2 to 5 to 1. Never go wrong with that. Never go wrong if you have a 3 chord, go into 6. If you have a 6, go to 2. If you have a 2, go to 5. If you have a 5, go to 1. Following the circle of fifths, never going to go wrong with that. But when you want to create that extra level of interest, so I say you're never going to go wrong with the circle of fifths, but you don't have to follow it. Anytime you feel like, this diatonic chord here is going to fit that melody, and I like how it sounds there, go for it. You don't need my permission. It's the non-diatonic chords that if you want the music to sound like this. I said that this piece is a wonderful example of really tonal music. It's very classically indicating this key of D in a way that, Mozart would have absolutely done. Whereas Colleen's example uses recognizable chords. I see a recognizable F chord. I see a recognizable diminished chord. I see a something that's maybe a D minor chord, maybe a B flat chord. I don't even know what the thing is exactly. But as I go through um, a B flat minor chord, I'm seeing all sorts of chords that sort of come from different keys. It's not sticking to one key. And again, I love that. It's a very late 19th century language that then a lot of jazz musicians, such as myself, really have embraced as well. So if you want to just do that language, then you pick the chords you want based on where your melody is, what your ear is telling you. There's very few rules that you would even need to follow to create that sound. But if you want to create this sound, you got to follow some rules. And okay, so I got to give my little standard speech about rules. Rules in music don't tell you what to do. They don't tell you. You can do whatever you want. And I made that comment a couple times in the cafe discussion. You're allowed to do whatever you want. Rules in music don't tell you what to do. They tell you what to do if you want to get a particular result. If you want to create music that sounds roughly like this, that sounds like, hey, that's in the key of D. It reminds me of what Mozart would have done, or what Handel would have done, or what any number of classical composers would have done if they were writing a chorale in the key of D. If you want to write music that sounds like that, then you got to do the things that they did, or it won't sound like they sounded. And so it's a set of rules to follow if you want a particular result. And I always liken it to the law of gravity. Here's my phone. I think probably you can see it. Law of gravity tells me if I drop this phone, it will fall. Law of gravity doesn't care if I drop the phone or not, right? The law of gravity doesn't care at all. It's not a you must do this thing. It's a this will happen if thing. So if I want the phone to not fall down, I won't drop it. If I want the phone to drop, I drop it. My choice, right? So same with the chords. You want to get the sound that Colleen got, then you don't have to worry about things like secondary dom. You can still do it, but you cannot use those things. You can use things much freer. You can add chromaticism any old time you want. If you think it sounds good, it will sound good in that genre. And then there might be other rules to follow about how to make that sound good as well. Again, not that you have to do it, but if you do it, it's going to sound good in that style. So if you want to sound good in this style, there's basically two things you need to know. You need to know your diatonic chords. And okay, three things. You need to know your diatonic chords. You need to know the circle of fifths. And then you need to know every once in a while throw in a secondary dominant. And that will be that sound. So, all right. So I am now looking back at the chat and seeing a discussion about B major. So the deal with B major is, and specifically about transpositions, I will tell you, because I'm going to guess your question is then, once you transpose that thing for clarinet, we've gone from 5 sharps to 7 sharps. Does the clarinet player want to see 7 sharps? Or would they rather see 5 flats? Sorry. My light is on a timer. That's how I know I've been sitting still for an hour. Um, uh, that is an open question, actually, whether a clarinet player would rather see 5 sharps or not. But I'm going to go to the score. Well, actually, I'm not going to mess up the score I made for Colleen here. I'm going to just create a new clarinet score. And just in case you're wondering, because I'm reading between the lines on your question, if I put 5 sharps in a key for clarinet, it will by default give me 7 sharps. Absolutely will. If you don't want that, as of 3.5, so another new feature, you can go to staff properties and say prefer sharps or flats. The default is to do the right thing. 7 sharps is correct. If you believe that your clarinet player would prefer 5 flats, do that. So the thing is, this is pretty subjective. You might think if you don't play the clarinet, furthermore, if you don't play the clarinet exclusively, I'll go that far. If your life isn't revolving around the clarinet, you might think, how could anyone prefer 7 sharps over 5 flats? 7 is more than 5. Furthermore, if you play mostly jazz or mostly concert band music, you might say, how could anyone prefer sharps at all? We all like flats better. Well, that is narrow thinking. I will say that if you are mostly an orchestral player, you are much more accustomed to seeing sharps than flats. And if you're mostly an orchestral clarinet player, you're accustomed to seeing more sharps than everyone else because of your transposition. So a lot of orchestral clarinet players will be more used to seeing sharps than flats, and a lot of them. So they might prefer the 7 sharps. On the other hand, they might have themselves an A clarinet, and so they might have a clarinet that transposes the other way. So don't assume that people would rather have 5 flats than 7 sharps. You might want to check with the people who are actually playing the thing or the standards of the whatever you're writing for. But I don't know if that's where you're going. I'm now going to go back to the chat, but that's something to be aware of. Okay. So for me personally, yeah, I prefer fewer sharps or flats to more of them, but I also weight towards the flat side because since I play a lot of jazz, I'm playing with not clarinet players so much, but saxophone players and trumpet players, and their transposition, they're going to prefer fewer flats or sharps. So the ideal key for a trumpet or a saxophone or anyone else, if you think of it as being C, for me as a pianist, that's B flat. That's concert B flat or concert E flat to make it be C for an alto player. So to kind of create music that's not too hard for piano or too hard for those wind instruments, we tend to focus on the keys of like B flat and F, the keys with a small number of flats. So that's my comfort zone. And then I can go a flat or two in the flatter direction or in the sharper direction. One little tick on the circle of fifths flatter, a couple of ticks sharper. So that's my comfort zone, is maybe from E flat to G on the circle of fifths. 3 flats, 2 flats, 1 flats, no flats, 1 sharp. That's my comfort zone personally. But if I played in a blues band, I'd feel the other way because now I'm playing with guitar players. My comfort zone would be G and D. And then I could go maybe a sharp or 2 in that direction, and maybe I could deal with F. But B flat and E flat would start looking really foreign, not because they're harder. 3 flats is no harder than 3 sharps, I guarantee it. It would be a comfort zone of what I'm more used to. So I'm a little more used to flats than sharps from playing a lot of jazz, but I've played enough classical music that I'm pretty comfortable with sharps too. All right. So, how do I prefer that you submit them? I prefer that you post them to the MuseScore Café. So where I have the MuseScore Café thing here, I believe I already posted it to the chat. I will post it again. So what I prefer is right in here. You go, you join the group, you upload your score to musescore.com, and you share it with this group. And then it is visible to anyone in the group. If you make it unlisted, it's basically visible only to people in the group I had mentioned. And so if you're concerned about, oh, I'm not ready for comments from the outside world, that'll keep it within this world. So that is, I've spent a long time talking about those first 2 pieces because those are the first 2 pieces I got and I had looked at already. There are other pieces that were then submitted that I'm seeing that were submitted within the past couple of days that I hadn't looked at yet, and I'm going to look at those next time. And so my goal here is I want to talk about harmony, and so I picked a couple pieces that I had looked at and knew I could talk about. Next week, I probably won't focus as much on harmony. I'll focus on something else. And a lot of it's going to be based on just what I see when I actually look at the pieces that were submitted. I did see Andres's piece. Actually, no, I didn't see this piece. I saw a different piece of his. So, yeah. So, Kirk, This is your piece here, and I see that yours is the one in here, so this we will be looking at next week. And I'll just open it right now and give us a little preview. Gorgeous. I love it. So yeah, I probably won't be able to resist talking about harmony on some of this because there's such really interesting things happen, but they're different, a different language happening. I mean, it's tonal, but it's got some different aspects to what's going on in the language. So I'll talk a little bit about that next time. I really look forward to it. Okay, so uh, I did see another comment about choosing the. Okay, cool. Yeah. Thinking of the A sharp as a B flat naturally sharp. So that's an interesting. I guess the comment that I'm looking at, Mirabilis. I'm going to pronounce it that way. Never really known how to say your handle. So, um, but um, I would just say if we think about the spelling of the notes as being proper, like in that example that I was looking at. Um, Andrew's example here. The reason why this is called A sharp is because it is resolving up to that B, and it provides the proper spelling of a B minor scale. We expect a B minor scale to have a seventh scale degree that's A sharp, and by spelling it that way rather than B flat, it makes that harmony clear that this is an F sharp major chord, F sharp, F sharp, A sharp, C sharp, which would be line, 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 or space, space, space when you put it on the staff, which is actually an important consideration to me as a pianist reading this. I want my triads to look like triads, gosh darn it. I want to see line, 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 or space, 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 and that's how I know it's a triad. And I actually had a very unfortunate experience of playing for a ballet once where the music had been prepared from a MIDI file, and the software had had to guess about the spelling of notes, and I had all sorts of things like D major triads that were spelt D flat A, and I had to like read this and somehow comprehend that it was a D major triad, and it was making my brain explode. it was it was not a fun performance. Well, the performance was fine. I was hired the day before the dress rehearsal because the previous pianist I think had a heart attack trying to deal with all that. Not literally, but in any case, next week we will pick up from that. Oh, I see. Yeah, more sharps as far as key preferences. But in any case, it was relevant to that also, just in case someone was ever wondering about such things. All right, so I hope you all had a good time here. I enjoyed listening to the music that people created, talking about it some, talking about harmony some. And next week we'll pick up and see what other people have come up with. If you have questions, feel free to just start more discussions in the cafe group on MuseScore.com. I'll try to check in. Other people check in there, and just let's keep the discussion going over the course of the week and start uploading some more music. And we'll just keep listening to music, keep talking about it, and I will make sure I don't have any last minute important questions. But otherwise, I will take my leave and see you all next week. So I don't have the clever shortcut on this system, so I have to come over here and sign off from over here. So see you later.